Howdy YouTubers, and welcome back to the Holtzmichel channel and this next episode of this old planer. Where we left off was with the grinding of the feed rolls. Those are the top feed rolls that actually power the board through the machine. Today we're going to be taking a look at the bottom feed rolls. This planer has a set of idler rolls in the bed, and I've noticed some anomalies with those as well, and so we're going to take a dial indicator, put it on there, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I did set it up in the lathe with the good old ring of faarrh, so that in case I had to do some high-speed turning. As it turns out, there is quite a variance in out of round. There's no belly in it, thank God, so I won't have to do much there, but I still have to turn down probably about 2/10 of a millimeter in order to get the roller round again, and then of course grind it. And so I'm going to reposition the camera here and show you the out of round. I set it up between centers. This roller had been, when it was manufactured initially, been drilled for centers, so all I had to do is essentially just clean out the hole and stick it in between centers. So we'll get you in closer here so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I got the old shop dial indicator here, made in the former DDR by K&S. That company's actually still in existence, and they still make micrometers and other precision measurement tools. They're actually a pretty good outfit, or at least their product is fairly decent. I don't get paid for mentioning them, but I picked up some of their micrometers in eBay and been pleasantly surprised. Anyway, to show you a little bit more here, I initially set this up to right here on 0. So now as we rotate it, you can see these are tenths on the dial, and so we're getting quite a variation here. There's quite a bit of a dip, 2.5 tenths, and that's just a little bit too much. Otherwise you get a wavy board when your bottom feed roll that idles across, where the board idles across it, so then your board just kind of dips and waves as it passes beneath the knives. So now let me reposition the camera here, and I'll show you how we would check for a belly. And I haven't been able to detect one. I mean, there's some anomalies because there is a lot of corrosion on this roller. You can see that all over. And so it has a tendency the needle to bob and weave. But let me show you how we check for a belly here. Okay, in order to check for a belly, in other words, where a lot of lumber is passed over the roll and worn a dip into the roll, now we're going to measure it longitudinally. And so just keep an eye on the needle. You're going to see some bouncing and weaving, but it's going to pretty much remain in the same spot all the way along the roller. You can see in the corrosion where the tip of the stylus here is scratching into the rust. I don't know if you can see that or not. I can see it pretty well, but if you can see that needle, it's dipping down just ever so slightly on a mean, but it's coming back up. So we got a little bit of a dip right in here, but nothing too terribly tragic. I mean, overall we could live with something like that, but the out around is what's giving me cause for concern. Now I'm going to run all the way up against the chuck, and it's pretty much still on the 0 setting that I had it before. So let me run it back here a little bit so we can get away from the chuck, and you can see that dip is still there, that 2.5 tenths of a millimeter. It's fairly consistent all the way through. Let me run it back up here. So we've got a consistency in the dip. That means this roller was probably, there's probably some kind of, what do you call it, snafu in the manufacture of this thing initially. So now we're going to chuck up a tool and get around again, and then put on the grinder. So I'll bring you guys back when I've got the initial cut done and show you how that's going to look. So here we've got the first skim cut already, and we can see a little bit of a belly in here that wasn't detectable with the dial indicator, even though it was a fairly good indicator. We can see here how there's skip all the way around, just a little bit of a cut. I only took a few hundredths cut here just to make sure that, you know, we leave enough material here to see where our defects are. These rollers have to be fairly accurate because they are the guiding part of the cut. So we're going to have to take probably a good tenth, maybe 2 off of this now. I didn't even crank the cross slide back just to see, you know, not to bias the cut and get the usual spring cut going back. Just wanted to see where this was going to end up at, and so let me take another cut. I'm going to keep the camera rolling so you guys can see what's going on here. Okay, so we've got a nice clean roller on 1/2, and we can see there is still quite a bit of skip on the other side, so we're going to have to take one more cut. I took 5/100ths here, so about 1/2 of a millimeter cut, and so I think probably get it with one more small cut, and that should take care of that. So I'll bring you guys back when I get this other cut completed. Don't need to bore you with all the rest of the nitty-gritty details. So here we are after another turn on the dial here. I took off another 3/100ths. So There's still a little bit of pitting left on one side of the roller, but other than that, it's fairly round. It's turned out fairly nice. I think I'm just going to leave this finished the way it is. I'm not even going to grind it. It's smooth enough. And you can hear the grooves from the feed, but I used a fresh bit on this, so it turned out fairly nice, and I think I'm just going to leave it alone. And that way I don't have to worry about any grinding dust and all that good jazz. But you can see, like I say, here's some pitting here. Now on the shaft stubs, I'm going to have to turn those down. They're out around also as well. So I think what I'm going to do is take them down to a nominal size. I'm not sure what size they are. It looks like a 19 millimeter. Let me measure that real quick. So we have 20 millimeters. Actually, it's a 19 something. Let's take another real good close measurement here with the guessometer. And it is 19.8. So we'll take it down to a nominal size, probably 18 millimeters, and then what I'm going to do is bush this. These are just a glide bearing in a block that bolts to the bottom of the table. So I'm going to drill out that block and then put a bronze bushing in there so that we get a better fit. And here's some of the chips. They're just, you can't really see this, they're just starting to turn a slight yellow, which means the feed and the turning speed were just about right for this steel, which is why I made this ring of fire. The turning dog that I had for this kind of stuff, you just got to run it too slow in order to do a decent job with this kind of material. So this thing's came in pretty handy. Here's a link to the video where I made this turning dog for those of you who are interested. And I'll bring you guys back here when I get these shaft stubs all turned down to nominal size. So I've turned this stub shaft down here to a nominal 19 millimeters. It's actually probably going to be a smidge under if I check it, because I just polished it with emery cloth. Actually dead nuts, so that'll work out just fine. If I have to, I can polish it some more, take off a couple of hundredths if need be, because when I drill out the bearing block for the bushing, I'm gonna have to ream the bushing anyway, so this might just turn out just fine. So now I'm gonna swap this end for end and do the same thing with this other stub shaft, and this roller will be done. And then it'll be on to the next one. It'll be the same process, so I won't bore you with all the nitty-gritty details, but just thought I'd show you how interesting these things do look when they come out of the machine, and what kind of surprises you can expect if you have an older machine. Now, as I mentioned before in the earlier videos, this machine was built in the 1920s, somewhere thereabouts, and so it's almost 100 years old. And you know, you can expect some wear and tear on it. For its age, it's actually in surprisingly good shape, better than I expected anyway. But there again, you know, manufacturing defects can be expected. You know, machinery of the day wasn't quite as good as it is nowadays in some respects, but then again, it was built to really last. So was this machine, and luckily there's enough material there where a guy can actually get away with stuff like this. Now, in the modern machines, these rollers generally aren't solid. This is actually a solid steel roller, so this pig is extremely heavy. And as I was turning the chamfers here, I was getting a little bit of harmonics, mainly due to the overhang of the quill here on the tailstock. So stuff like that's to be expected. If you got to, you know, you want to keep your quill as short as you can in order to avoid those harmonics. Unfortunately, with the cross slide and the way I have to set the tool here, I have to run the quill out a little bit further, and so it's going to produce those harmonics. But Yeah, anyway, this turning ring here has been a blessing in so many ways. So again, for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff, go check out the ring of faarrh, how it was made, and I'm sure you can make one for yourself. This is essentially just a turning dog in use between centers, because the whole pattern fits right into the chuck, and I don't have to worry about backlash and stuff like that when shutting down. So YouTubers, that wraps up today's episode on the feed rolls. Like I said, the other one's just going to be a rinse and repeat of this one. So the only thing I have to watch out for is that I get roughly the same nominal size on the stub shafts. The difference in height in the bearing can be, or I mean in the roller, as far as diameters goes, you can in the setup of the planer you can compensate for that by different shims, or depending on how you know when you put the roller in. That's going to be a subject for another video, so when I get to that, I'll show you how those are set up and all that good jazz, so you don't have to worry about, well, gee, how am I going to worry about compensating for variations in diameters of these feed rollers. So the only thing that had to be exactly the same was the powered feed rolls, because otherwise you get different gear ratios. You get one roller turning faster than the other by different diameters. They will compensate. Granted, it's not going to be that critical, but in order to keep your board and your lumber running straight through the machine, you want to have within a few hundredths of a millimeter the same diameter all the way across on powered feed rolls, so that you don't get one one that's going to be turning, that's larger, is going to have a faster peripheral speed on the roller than one of a lesser diameter. So you got to keep those fairly close, usually within a hundredth or two of a millimeter, in order to keep your lumber from drifting to one side or the other as it feeds through the machine. Nothing worse than that. Now, when you get into these Chinese machines, you'll see variations that just make your hair stand on end. So anyway, this is going to be a continuing project, so stay tuned for more episodes on this old planer. And if there's any thoughts or comments or thoughts you'd like to share or questions you might have, by all means leave them in the comment section below. And I'd like to thank, of course, all the new subscribers that have come on board, especially for this subject, and hope to see you again soon.